Right now, Pokemon cards are in a really strange period. We have record-breaking sales and more eyes on the hobby than ever before. However, then we also have questions on whether or not it's worth investing in collectibles at the moment because it may seem a little bit overhyped. So that's why in this video, I want to go over the 10 Pokemon cards that I believe are the ones that everyone should be looking out for right now and provide some of my thoughts and rationale behind the choices and personally what I believe are the best long-term plays at the moment. All right, so starting at number 10, it is the Meowth illustration rare from Phantasmal Flames. This is an absolute gorgeous artwork, and honestly, the price is pretty good at the moment. All right, so the Meowth illustration rare, as you can see here in December, when Phantasmal Flames was just early days, it was selling for 21 US. Right now, it is selling for $13, pretty much a $14 card. Okay, the Meowth to me is looking at a very, very good price point, to be fair, because it is an amazing illustration rare, and it did take such a long time to get this into the English TCG. This was already revealed for the Japanese TCG, had this much before us. I really think this artwork's great. I really think it ticks a lot of those boxes. Everyone loves Generation 1 Pokemon, and they usually are pretty good plays for the long term for those collectors as well. Now, moving on to number 9, it is Black Bolt and White Flare. Now, these to me are the most underrated gems in terms of the Scarlet and Violet era, and I'm super happy to see that they actually haven't moved too much in price, but I do think these are primed for a 2026 takeoff, and a big one at that too. So, right here, I'm just on the Black Bolt Elite Trainer box, and you can see it was always selling for around 78 US, 76 US, and right now around here, selling for $89. So it hasn't had this massive price growth. I mean, when I'm looking at Black Bolt, and even like when I look at Ascended Heroes, which just released, Ascended Heroes right now selling for like 120 bucks for one ETB. So it's cheaper than Ascended Heroes Black Bolt. It's a really underrated set, and I do think for 2026, these two sets in particular will really climb. I mean, even looking at White Flare, it was selling for $71 around December, right now selling for 76 bucks. I mean, to me, in terms of what we can see brand new ETBs like Ascended Heroes are selling for, right now, like at the price points they are, I think they're really good purchases. Now, in spot number 8, it is the Latias EX Special Illustration Rare from Surging Sparks. Now, Surging Sparks has some of the hardest pull rates for SIRs within the Scarlet and Violet era, so it's definitely one to look out for considering how difficult it is to pull. I mean, just looking at it right here, okay, you can see it was selling for $201 in April of last year, and it's really, it hasn't had that much movement. It went to 153. Right now selling for 160 US. So it definitely is an expensive card. It hasn't moved like into these crazy spikes. It hasn't even dropped. It's actually stayed very steady in the market. When Surging Sparks came out, everyone was like really frothing this card, man. It was just like, oh dude, like this is gonna be the biggest thing ever. Kind of tapered off a bit. It's not probably the most interesting special illustration rare. And also, you gotta remember the PSA 10 chances of this card are super difficult. Now also guys, I just want to say, if you have been enjoying the video, definitely feel free to subscribe to the channel. My name's Phil, and I've been talking about Pokemon on YouTube for over 2 years now, and a personal thank you to all of you watching it because it's really cool to see the channel growing, and of course I love seeing new people on the channel as well. Now in spot number 7, it is En's Reshiram stamped promo from Journey Together. So if you're new to the hobby, as I know a lot of people are, especially in 2026 with a lot of newcomers coming into the hobby, this En's Reshiram actually has 2 versions. There is a standard version and there is a stamped version. Essentially, you can pull the standard version from Journey Together in any booster pack. However, if you want the stamped promo, you can only get that by buying a Journey Together enhanced booster box, and this comes as a promo inside of that. So that's a little bit unique there. But just looking at this, so this card has like, all right, if we're looking around last year, it was selling for around 10 bucks. So really, really cheap promo. Then it had a bit of an area where it spiked right here around 43 US. So that's when it got a little bit like crazy with the price point, but it has dropped down and right now selling right here for 17 US. So to me, that looks okay, to be honest, for a price point. In terms of like the only way to get this card is if you actually do open a Journey Together enhanced booster box. The only thing is a lot of people would have been opening that too. So there's a lot of these out there, probably more than a lot of people expect, but they are a little bit of a relic for their time period. The only way to get it is with an enhanced booster box. Whether or not Journey Together is still getting heavily printed right now, there's just so much more things coming out. It's also the first time that box top has returned, so there was a bit of hype there. And also it is En's Reshiram, really cool character, really cool Pokemon as well. Box legendary, really ticks a lot of those boxes. Also a stamped promo. I really think this one is one to look out for at the moment. Now moving on to spot number 6, it's the Blaziken illustration rare from Destined Rivals. So right here with Blaziken, okay, it was selling for around 13 US, and right now it's selling for $8.90. Okay, so this card is definitely an affordable illustration rare. Is it the most difficult card to pull? No, but as a Generation 3 classic, to me, it seems like it's really well priced and a little bit underrated at the moment as well. I definitely could see in the future a lot of these cards, like the Houndoom from Destined Rivals, this Blaziken, and a lot of illustration rares to pick up a little bit in popularity, especially as the hobby grows. People are real, and I've got a theory, just a thing that I'm thinking, as time goes on, especially in 5-10 years, when people look at their older cards, it's not just going to be like now when you look at an Electabuzz cards or an Electivire card, for example, and you look at the Diamond and Pearl era, and it's just like a very basic card. When we look back, a lot of these illustration rares are going to be so iconic because you're never going to get these artworks revisited ever again like this. They're going to be so in their time period. So for me, they're really cool artworks, and I think this Blaziken right now is definitely an underrated gem. Now, if you do want to purchase any of these cards, it's actually essential that you track them over the long term, and Collector is the perfect solution for that, who also are the sponsors of today's video. Collector is a collectible portfolio tracking app that lets you see the value of your collection over time. So throughout this video, I've actually been using Collector's graphs, and not only do they look incredible, but they also have some very awesome features. For example, if you're a Collector Pro member, you do get access to the Max tab, which lets you extend pricing data past the 1-year graph, which is super useful for collectors who are in it for the long term. Collector also has a very handy built-in trade analyzer feature. Here you can place what you're offering versus what you'll be receiving and see if it's a fair market match. Now, what's really awesome is that Collector doesn't just track Pokemon, it actually has a huge amount of TCGs available. So for example, it also has One Piece and even Dragon Ball. Collector are the leaders when it comes to tracking, researching, and managing your collectibles. You can find the details to download the Collector app in the video's description. A big thanks to Collector for supporting the channel. Now let's jump back into this video. Now moving on to number 5, it is Ascended Heroes Elite Trainer Boxes. I mean, just looking here with Ascended Heroes, right, it was selling for 117 US, went all the way up to $155, and right now selling here for around, there you go, 119 US. So it's definitely not a cheap ETB by any chance, but I do think for sealed products with Ascended Heroes, if we look at any of those early January sets, whether it be Ascended Heroes, whether it be Prismatic Evolutions, Paldean Fates, Crown Zenith, they always have had very, very strong performance over the long term. And with how hyped Ascended Heroes has been and all the amazing SIRs, I really don't see this one playing out any differently for the sealed product. Though with the singles at the moment, I would be a little bit careful because I do think they're quite overpriced at the moment. Now, moving on to number 4, one that I'm expecting to have a little bit of hype behind it is the Mega Venusaur from Mega Evolution base set. So right here on the Mega Venusaur, we can see it was selling for around, top of the market here for around 231 US. Okay, now it is selling for right here around that 121 US with Pokemon Leaf Green and Fire Red that have been released and the whole Generation 1 hype that's kind of coming about. I really do think that that is going to have a big effect on the market, not only in the video games, which I'll speak about in a second, but I also do think in terms of these Generation 1, like the starter trio Pokemon as well, I do think they're going to get a little bit of hype behind them. I think people like one thing that's crazy about all this is I think people have kind of minimized on how hyped those releases are and how many people are coming back and they're going to revisit that. I do think, again, that is going to pull in another big wave of Generation 1 fandom. Like I said, it's not that I do think in terms of like my personal preferences, I'm not actually the biggest fan of Generation 1 at the moment, a bit over it. But in terms of that collector market, definitely is something that we all need to be monitoring. Now, interestingly, moving on to number 3, it is a little bit unconventional, but I'm actually thinking that both Pokemon Fire Red and Pokemon Leaf Green complete in-box copies will begin rising. Now, one thing that people said is that, and it's been a big topic, that they said that with Fire Red and Leaf Green coming out, that they thought that the physical cartridges will start coming down in price. Though there's one thing about collectibles, they usually go a little bit against logic. I mean, the video games, and particularly the complete in-box versions, I do think have room to grow, especially if a lot of people start revisiting these games and want to own one of these as a collectible. Just because it's easier to get now in a digital format doesn't mean that people aren't still going to want the original copies. Collectibles have weird things that happen. It's like when Blooming Waters got announced that, there was more 151 products that would be entering the market. And around that time, somehow 151 singles started increasing in price, which made no sense, right? Because you had more sealed entering the market, yet the singles were rising in price. So that's why I actually am keeping a big focus on these. And in a lot of ways, these are very, very much loved games. And like I know with collectibles, sometimes what people expect is usually the opposite that happens. So I am thinking that the complete in-box versions are ones that I would be monitoring at the moment. Now, moving on to number 2, it is anything from Pokemon 151. And like I said, the huge new influx of Generation 1 fans coming back in, especially with Pokemon Fire Red, Leaf Green, anything with 151 right now pretty much has a very strong future ahead of it. This doesn't matter if it's sealed, singles, literally anything. Right now, I think it's in a very strong position to take off, and it's something I'd be seriously considering. Pokemon just knows how to re-engage lost fans, and they've done this perfectly. I mean, like I said, the Fire Red, Leaf Green hype, that's obviously built a lot of fans to, get drawn back into the hobby, and they will slowly trickle into the TCG, and we can expect this sooner rather than later. One crazy thing, and it's a little bit of a thing, it's a bit worrisome, but I made a video talking about Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green. I kind of spoke my thoughts about it, but there were people that were actually, a lot of people were saying, hey, I'm considering buying a Switch for these games, which to me is mind-blowing because these are 32-bit games. Like the fact that people would actually consider buying a Switch 2, that just tells you how big the nostalgia is and how almost scary it is, the fact that people will literally buy a whole new console just to play games that came out 20 years ago that are 32-bit games as well. It's something to really consider. But in spot number 1, it is definitely Temporal Forces booster boxes. Now, Temporal Forces is such an underrated gem, and when you go through the library of the illustration rares and the SIRs, I honestly think this set has been a sleeping giant. One thing I've always loved about Temporal Forces is that it is a very much Generation 9 themed set. In fact, it's probably the most Gen 9 set that we've had when we look at the chase cards. If we look around here, right, like selling for 196 US. Now, that was in May. If we go up to November, we're selling for 282. Right now here, selling for 207 US. Is that a cheap booster box? No, but in terms of, I do think it is such an underrated gem of a set. I really think Temporal Forces, when people wake up to it, will really start appreciating it. I think it's never going to be one of the biggest sets of the Scarlet and Violet era. It's never going to be one like an Evolving Skies level, nothing like that. But in terms of just one that does have room to grow, I really do think it's been under the radar for a long time. And it's one that I've been looking out for a while, just because I do think that there is high chance for people to look back and say, wow, some of those illustration rares and SIRs are actually incredible. Now, these cards are exciting, though one thing a lot of people wonder is, how do you actually not lose money when collecting Pokemon cards? And the reason for that is because you can fall into a bit of a money pit, especially if you don't monitor your spending habits. Though if you are interested in how to make this hobby a sustainable hobby with also the chance for growth, I do actually cover that in this video here. Within this video, I'll look into the longevity of the hobby and how to collect in a way that doesn't lose money. If you enjoyed this video, click the video that's appearing on screen. Appreciate you watching, and I'll see you on the next video.